This episode of the Multiracialverse podcast is brought to you by Eviton Couture, a brand born from a powerful vision and a deep connection to heritage. Founded by Shinnecock brothers Jason Tech King and Wayon Moon Smith, Eviton represents resilience and pride. From handmade tie-dye to wellness-focused athletic wear, each piece is crafted with intention and positivity, smudged with sage for good vibes, and delivered to you with love. Join the Eviton family on their journey of empowerment and inspiration. Hit up Moon on Instagram at Eviton_KS. That is native spelled backwards _KS to view product and place an order. Eviton Couture. Feel the spirit of resilience in every stitch.
And, with my dad's family, they definitely would have preferred that he was with a Puerto Rican woman. And there was a language barrier because my grandparents, especially my grandmother, they really didn't speak English. They were very much stayed in their community. And so just even that aspect was challenging. Although I think for my mom never learned more than a few words of Spanish. And in some ways, I think that was like to maintain a distance in some ways. I don't know. And then on my mom's side, I think I also am pretty sure that her parents would have, just from even things that my grandparents had said to me, like about, wouldn't it be nice for you to find a nice Jewish boy? Very much.
Yeah.
They're stereotypical sentiments, but they existed and they were there.
Welcome back to the Multiracialverse podcast. I am your host, Antonio Fernandez. And today on episode 14, we have an exceptional guest with us. Sharon Murriguez, a dynamic yogi and movement teacher with a rich multicultural background, joins us to share her unique journey. Growing up in the Bronx with a Puerto Rican father and a Russian, Polish, Jewish mother, Sharon was immersed in diverse cultural traditions from a young age. This vibrant blend of heritages has deeply influenced her life and work. Sharon graduated from Brown University with a degree in Art Semiotics, where she combined cultural theory with art practice. While she explored various artistic mediums, her true passion lies in yoga and fitness. With over 15 years of experience, Sharon is an experienced registered yoga teacher and a certified personal trainer. She masterfully blends the modalities of yoga and fitness into her classes, offering a holistic experience for the body, mind, and soul. Currently residing in Catania, Sicily, Sharon teaches yoga both locally and internationally. She also leads immersive yoga retreats that blend the rich cultural heritage of Italy with the transformative practice of yoga. Tune in to hear Sharon's inspiring story, her insights on cultural identity, and how she brings her diverse background into her yoga practice. Don't miss this enlightening conversation on episode 14 of the Multiracialverse podcast. Hi, Sharon. Welcome to the Multiracialverse. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Super excited to chat today.
Yes. I'm glad we connected. Now, for the audience, where are you at right now?
So right now, I am currently in Sicily. That's the southernmost part of Italy. So if you know the shape of Italy, it's a boot, like kicking a ball. So Sicily is like the ball that is being kicked. And I live in the city of Catania.
Awesome. So we had to coordinate schedules a few times, but
indeed.
And you're busy with your busy life too, but I appreciate it. I can't wait to talk to you about how you ended up in Sicily. But let's start with where life began for you. Your origins.
Well, I did not grow up here. I'm not Italian, and I have done the 23andMe DNA assessment, which also affirms that I am not Italian, though I have a significant amount of Southern European DNA, no Northern European DNA. But my story started in New York, in the Bronx, where I was born to my Ashkenazi Jewish mother and my Puerto Rican Catholic father. And I lived there most of my formative years and then stayed on the East Coast of the US and went to college just a little north in Rhode Island, and then spent most of my adult life in the Bay Area of California. And that's actually how we know each other.
Yeah.
Because we were neighbors in Berkeley, but I first started in San Francisco, then after 4 years moved to Oakland, and then after maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, moved to Berkeley and was in the Bay for almost 20 years. It was 19 years,
Wow.
almost exactly 19 years. And then in September of 2019, moved here to Italy and have been here for a little over 4 years. And it's interesting to live in a different culture and to be a straniera, a foreigner, and it has so far been a really interesting and fun and challenging experience. But if we want to take a rewind button back to New York, late 70s, that was also an interesting experience for me growing up in a family of very different but also very strong cultures. And I feel, I think everything is an opportunity to learn. So I think for me, I feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to have had two very rich cultures in my life, but then also the union of the two were its own unique thing. And I think that's something for me, I am really grateful for, that my parents, with their challenges amongst themselves and just in life in general, did create, I think, a unique and safe oasis for me and my brother in our apartment. Their union of their two different cultures, I think, came together in a way that I felt very safe and was beautiful. And we had traditions from both sides of their families. And it's probably the single most place that I felt like I could totally be myself and I felt loved.
Were your parents both originally from New York?
So, no, my mom she was born in Brooklyn and then grew up most of her life in Long Island on the border of Queens. And then my dad was born in Puerto Rico, and his parents, with other parts of the family, moved from Puerto Rico when he was a kid, so around 5, 6 years old. They moved to a neighborhood in the Bronx and had a little community there. And it was my grandparents, other cousins of my dad, and he had an older brother, moved, and they had a little community there.
And him and your mom met there in New York?
They did. They met in New York. It's actually a cute story. They met both. I mean, they were both living in New York for a really long time. I mean, my mom was born there. My dad moved when he was, a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on a tour. They were on some tour of New York. I think it might have even been a singles tour, before internet dating, managing people. And so they met on this tour. My mom was with a friend. My mom's friend actually fancied my dad. And my mom, my dad, this other guy, and my mom's friend at the time, that night they went out for dinner, they hung out, but things didn't work out with a friend of my dad. And so here I am to be a testament to their connection.
That's awesome. Did they run into, that of, any types of issues with family being, a multiracial couple during the time that they were getting, to know each other and then eventually marry?
I I would say yes, just from stories that they've both shared on both sides. I think
Yeah.
it was a time period, and I think this still exists, but where there was just, some distrust of people who weren't from where you were from.
Yeah.
And with my dad's family, they definitely would have preferred that he was with a Puerto Rican woman. And there was a language barrier because my grandparents, especially my grandmother, they really didn't speak English. They were very much stayed in their community. And so just even that aspect was challenging. Although I think for my mom never learned more than a few words of Spanish. And in some ways, I think that was like to maintain a distance in some ways. I don't know. And then on my mom's side, I think I also am pretty sure that her parents would have, just from even things that my grandparents had said to me, like about, wouldn't it be nice for you to find a nice Jewish boy? Very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're stereotypical sentiments, but they existed and they were there. And so I think they just, even from their own decision to be together and to get married, I think they did get resistance from both of their parents, and different sides of their families have said different things. I mean, even interestingly enough, once my parents were already together and married and my mom was pregnant with me, I'm the oldest child, and I have a younger brother, but one of my dad's brother's wife, who is also Puerto Rican, she pulled my mom aside and was like, aren't you worried what, your child might look like? Just even very straight up racist, dialogue.
Yeah.
Isn't this a concern? And it's just very interesting because this was coming from, not from my mom's Jewish side of the family. This was coming from, my dad's brother's Puerto Rican wife. So, just sometimes how it's not even the hatred of the other, but the hatred of the self. And how we have these imposed systems that we don't even necessarily we're not necessarily consciously aware of all the time.
Yeah.
But it comes out in these pretty ugly comments.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that was the conversation. And nowadays I feel, you hear a lot about the conversation if, that kind of trope around mixed children or having mixed babies is still around, but a lot of times you'll hear the opposite conversation of people going, "Oh, I want a mixed child because they're more beautiful," or whatever that myth or trope is around that, So that's interesting, that dynamic, how that is the story, or that trope has changed over time somewhat. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's still a judgment of physicality, or it's still like an exotification, or ooh, isn't this like a cool mix? It's like,
yes,
okay, this is an interesting perspective, and
Yeah, like somebody was saying, it's not a science project, right? Like these are two humans, that love each other, and it's so dynamic. But it's funny how that all that can be stripped away so easily. So, what did that look like after you were born? From maybe some of your earlier childhood memories growing up, what did traditions and culture look like in your house? And there is, I spoke to another guest who was first generation on his dad's side, Puerto Rican, and he was talking about how his dad had this connection to, as he said, the island, and he also called, there was a new wave of Puerto Ricans coming into New York, and they called them the Nuyo-Ricans. And his dad always kind of pitted them against, one another. But, what did tradition look like as far as, celebrations, food, and even language? You said that there wasn't really English was spoken, and there is actually I don't know if you want to share the story that you shared about your dad learning English. I think it's awesome, the one about him and his brother practicing. But anyway, go ahead. There was a lot in there.
Absolutely.
Probably.
No, I mean, I think the language stuff is really interesting, both the language and how you look, if you look different. And different from what? Then what are we assuming is normal? This white identity, right? But so when my dad came to New York with his family, he was about 5 years old. And so he and his brother, who was 2 years older than he was, they were put into school right away. And school was in English. There weren't any ESL classes at that time, or where they were going to school in public school. And so he and his brother started speaking English to each other, which was them speaking in Spanish, but with this New York American accent. So they'd be like, hola, ¿cómo estás? And that was like them speaking English. And, the facility for learning a language when you're a kid is much greater than when you are an adult, which I'm finding learning Italian now. It's happening, but it's not like being a kid learning a language. And that's something that I do have some, I wouldn't say it's anger, but I have some just like challenges that have taken me a little while to resolve with my dad, because Spanish was his first language. He had to learn by immersion and deal with a transition period in school where, he was young. So, it wasn't like he was learning complicated stuff in high school, but, he went through a period where he had to where he didn't understand a lot of what was going on around him. And the same for his brother. And so I would think that because of his experience, he would have spoken to me and my brother in Spanish, and my mom would have spoken to us, which she did in English because she didn't speak Spanish. And he didn't. He spoke to us in English also. And, that was something that I was like, why? And I think for him, it was, in a way, to protect us. It was his way of, assimilation was valued when he had moved here, being able to fit in, and the biases that were shown to him in looking for jobs, in a lot of the perceptions of how people saw his parents and the assumptions they made. And so he didn't want me or my brother to have that. He wanted us to be American, which is, in his mind was, or not even in his mind, because this wasn't his mind. I think this is like honestly, a very white supremacist framework, but it is this white identity. And it's like, well, that actually couldn't be farther from the actual truth when we look at history. That's not what America is. But it's what we have been programmed to cultural norm. And so I think for him, maybe not at a conscious level, but certainly with his behavior towards me and my brother growing up, Spanish was not spoken in the house. And his parents, when my brother was, right after my brother was born, so I was 2 years old, his parents moved back to Puerto Rico. And then they moved back to New York when I was around 10 or 11, and they actually lived with us in our little Bronx apartment for 2 years. And I did not really like that. It was very challenging because there were certain cultural things that were just expected. Like my grandmother would go through my drawers and she would be like, "Oh, I like these earrings. Can I have them?" I'm like, "I'm 10 years old. I'm really taking my earrings."
Yeah.
But it was just a very, like, I was used to having more autonomy and my own private space. And I think just culturally it was different and I wasn't used to it. And then just sharing more space, they were in my parents' bedroom. So my parents were, then in the space with me and my brother. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did that look like from the perspective of, as far as traditions in the household? Was it, because we're finding, the American culture, like, even if somebody is claiming their, or is mixed with, a little of this and a little of that, sometimes there's cultural traditions and things like that passed down. But I'm finding too, like, there's this whole other, like, everybody's kind of multicultural because the American culture is constantly like a wave hitting against everyone. So they're getting somewhat, soaked by this wave of American culture, whether they're trying to assimilate or not, or stay away from that wave, So what did that look like in your house with you? Probably you were going to public schools. Everything was. What did that look and feel like to you, as far as like who you hung around with and learning?
Yeah, and so there's a lot there. There's a lot in your questions. So I would say on the home front, culturally, especially when my grandparents were living with us, a lot of the culture was shared through food. Mm-hmm. And my dad loved to cook. So, and he actually had a dream that was not ever realized, but he wanted to open a Puerto Rican restaurant. And he actually tried to get a loan for it, but it was denied because I think restaurants are just really hard businesses to succeed in. But he wanted it to be called flamboyant. And there's this tree from Puerto Rico that is called the flamboyant tree. And it's a really beautiful tree. And he wanted to have this tree in the middle of the restaurant. But I say that just to mention, like, my dad was super into food and super into cooking and was really proud of his Puerto Rican cuisine. And then when his parents were here or were there with us, my grandparents, that's what they cooked. Like, and it was cool. There were the specialties for the different holidays. For Christmas, it was always pasteles, which is a production, like just a giant, like, my grandfather would buy like a giant plastic garbage can that hadn't been used before to mix like the masa in. And then it would be like an assembly line. The banana leaves is what they get wrapped up in. And you put the veggies, the meat, and then they get boiled and eaten. And I remember loving those as a kid. And then pastelillos. My grandfather, that was also like his, like, he had the special recipe for the dough, unparalleled, like, family was like, okay, he make the best pastelillos. And my grandma, she was like the rice and beans queen. That was like her area of shining. And then there were a lot of other things that I wouldn't eat now because I don't eat meat, but there was a lot of meat. There was the pernil, the pork shoulder, that were just, just very much parts of the culture. Yeah. People really like sat around the table, the music, dancing, hanging out. I know my father's upbringing, like, there was a lot of like intergenerational hanging out with a family.
Yeah.
Of, like, just people spent time together. And I think that was a little lost in my generation, but what did come down was the food and the music. And my dad also loved music. So we had a huge collection of records. And, Yeah, one time we got in trouble because we lived in an apartment building, and the apartment below us, apparently we were making too much noise dancing. And so they called security or the police, and the police came knocking on the door like, can you turn it down? And when the police got there, they were like, okay, obviously this is like a family dancing around.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
people need to chill out. But, you know, I just have really fond memories of those times. And in terms of how that translated to outside of the house, it's interesting because, so I went to public school until 8th grade, so junior high school. Mm-hmm. And then I had the opportunity to go to a private high school because I excelled I did well in school. I got good grades. And there was a program called the Oliver Program that placed basically students of color and to private schools. So some were boarding schools, some were day schools. I went to a day school. My parents didn't want me going away from home. I think also very cultural. And that was interesting because it was a big transition in terms of what I was used to, just in terms of I used to walk to school up until junior high school, and then this fancy private high school was nowhere near where I lived. So that was like taking, 2 public buses across the Bronx. It was still in the Bronx, but it was on the total other side of the Bronx. And it was a very different population, just much wealthier, much whiter. And so my friends were mostly other Puerto Rican, Latino, Black students that we really like, basically students of color.
Yeah.
Created our own safe space. And I mean, it's interesting also for me to say that because getting into this program, I mean, you see me, I can pass. I look very white as a mixed person. No one looks at me and sees a brown person or a person of color. Like, so, there's my identity of how I have experienced my life and the culture that I have within me, and then how other people see me. And it's interesting, that relationship with self and then how others see you. Because there is privilege that comes with that, like being able to pass. There are certain things that I don't have to worry about or be afraid of that friends of mine do. And then there's certain aspects that, you don't always feel like you belong, or there were questions of, when I was offered a spot in this program to have the opportunity to go to this private high school, there was discussion about, well, she's half, like, is that enough? Like, and so I think from that point in my life, there was always like a question of belonging and identity and internal. And I know that, I mean, it's a privilege to have that internal dialogue or that even like discussion of self-identity, I think even if it is challenging and sometimes painful at times, to be like, who am I? Where do I belong? I don't feel like I really belong anywhere, actually, because the Puerto Rican kids are like, but you look white. And then the white kids are like, but no, and so it's like.
Yeah. And was there a time that you can remember in, I don't know, maybe grade school or as you were, becoming a teenager, that you really felt that otherness, where you're like, oh, wait a second, like I'm these two different cultures, but the dominant white culture is seeing me as this. Like, do you remember anything that sticks out as being a child where that was, you had one of those moments of like, oh shit, like there's something at play here?
Yeah, I do. And I think the first moment like that I really remember was in first grade. So 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was starting because I had gone to, I don't know even why, because it's not like being old. But I had been in a different school for kindergarten. And so but this public school started from kindergarten. So I was new, whereas the students in the class had been there from the year before. So I remember it was one of the first days of school, maybe even the first day of school. And another teacher came to the door and, called my name that I needed to go with her. He's like, okay, so whatever. So I go with her and they start giving me a test. And it's a very, very easy test. It's like, asking me what color this is, or very basic, language skills.
Yeah.
And it was very fun for me because I was like, oh, I'm doing great. I'm getting all the answers right. Yay.
Yeah.
But it was, and I think it's not necessarily a negative thing that they were doing, but they were like, oh, she's a Rodriguez. Does she speak English? They were assessing, can she be in this class? Is she going to understand what's going on? Which, okay, on the one hand, yay, nice, good.
Yeah.
Because then hopefully if I didn't, there would have been some support for me in learning English.
Sure.
But in the process of just this other teacher coming to the door, calling a student out of the classroom in front of other students, and to, go to this other place was just, oh, why isn't everyone being given this?
Yeah.
Why am I getting this?
Yeah. So I want to ask about your mother's culture too. You used the term Ashkenazi. Can you maybe explain that to someone who doesn't know? And tell us how. Because I think, right, if I don't know per se, but if your mother is Jewish, you have that for some reason that's considered that you're more Jewish than if your father's Jewish, right?
It is, and to be honest,
via the birthright thing, I guess,
Yeah, and I honestly don't totally understand that. So even though the blood is there, I'm not an expert. I don't totally know why that's the case, because that doesn't make sense to me. If you look at a person's DNA, 50% comes from their mother, 50% comes from their father. Why would it matter?
Yeah.
So I don't understand the culture or religion in the sense of why it would matter more that it comes from the mother. But you are right. I know that is the case. It's like other Jews who are like, oh, you're only half. Oh, but it's your mom. Okay. It's somehow more powerful or potent, which I personally think is ridiculous. But I don't mean to be dismissive in that comment. I just don't understand it. But I guess, so it's interesting. And I mentioned that I did 23andMe. And so this was something that came up. And so it mentioned specifically Ashkenazi Jew, which I guess there are Sephardic Jews as well.
Yes.
And Ashkenazi Jews are a diasporic population. So in other aspects of the DNA breakdown, it's related to a place. So, this country, Spain, Portugal, Ethiopia, very specific countries.
Yeah.
Whereas for Ashkenazi Jew, it's just, there is no location, because it was, if you kind of expand that section, it's this is the path at different, in different centuries that the Ashkenazi Jews followed. So, I do know from just closer relatives from my mom's side of the family that her, second generation, I guess, because her parents were born here in the U.S.
Yeah.
But that her other family was from more Russian Polish.
Okay.
And then she was born in New York.
And so culturally, was her family as involved as your dad's family once your mom and dad married, and as they were raising you? Were there instances of, oh yeah, we're going to celebrate Hanukkah too, or did that come up? Yeah,
it did, and I think that was very important to my mom's parents, my grandparents, that there were, because their identity as Jewish was important to them. And I actually did have a bat mitzvah even. So even though like we never went to temple, like so this is what's funny to me is like also like these cultural markers that are just, they're symbolic.
Yeah.
So I did not grow up going to temple. I didn't grow up going to church either, but like I've been to a midnight mass. And then in this period, less than a year long period of my life, I had to show up to temple and learn how to read Hebrew to have this ceremony.
Yeah.
That was for my grandparents. So it's interesting because I participated in those cultural events, right? And I don't want to say they're meaningless to me because they're not meaningless.
Sure.
But to be honest, like I don't feel connected to the ritual because it wasn't from a place where I understood it. It was more out of a place of respect for my grandparents. And again, though, I think where the cultural connection came in more on also my mom's side was through food and being with family for different holidays and sitting around the table together and spending time more in a personal environment rather than in a place of worship or in a more public environment.
And how did you identify, ethnically, or how did that change throughout your teen and into your adult years?
I mean, I would always call myself a Nuyo-Jew-irican because that felt like very, and I think of all the places, even though like, I wouldn't say that like any place in terms of a location feels like home. I do think New York in some way just feels like the closest to an identity that I have. I feel like a New Yorker more than anything else. Because I feel like both of those identities like are just very much a part of the place. And so I feel that's how I would identify. I would put it together because I don't identify as a Jew. I don't identify as a Puerto Rican, or maybe I think I probably identify maybe more as a Puerto Rican than a Jew, only because I think I've been put in that bucket more by others.
Yeah.
And for whatever that's worth. But I see it as for me, like, you can't pick a person apart, So I feel like those identities have really merged to be its own thing in how I see myself.
I love that. Yeah, you can't pick a person apart. I love that. Did you, at any point, maybe in college, a lot of times individuals have the opportunity to join, there's affinity groups or other things that are communities for ethnically diverse groups, like college campuses. Did you find groups that you felt comfortable with, affinity groups, or did you search out either one of your cultures, or did you create kind of your own, like, this is me and this is my identity? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. I kind of love that question, because I think this question of identity, and specifically racial and ethnic identity, came up a lot during college, because, the colleges, they want to know, you have to write about yourself.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that has to do with exploring, who am I and what has impacted my life to this point. And so with that, when I was figuring out where do I want to go to school, I did visit a lot of campuses and was really confused and was like, I have no idea what to do. But I finally made a decision.
Really quick, can I ask, culturally, were you pushed anywhere? Like, was your father saying education is important? Like, my dad always was like, you got to get an education, or your mom was like, yeah, you got to get an education. Was that something that was promoted in the household, or just happened because...
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes. And so it's interesting. Yes, I would say yes and no. Because yes, in the sense of like, you have to get an education, because they didn't. Neither of my parents went to college. And so I think it was important that like their kids did better than they did in that respect. I mean, I don't believe in that framework necessarily. I think that's a path for some and not necessarily the path for others. I really liked going to school. I was good at school in the traditional sense, in the sense that I got good grades and could take tests well. So for me, that framework worked. It did not work for my brother, who was just 2 years younger than me. And so we had, even though we grew up in the same household, we were very close in age, we had very different educational experiences.
Yeah.
So that was that. But I felt no pressure that I had to get into a specific school. They just wanted, like, I put more pressure on myself than they put on me.
Yeah.
It was just important that I did it. And I did take a year off during college, and that freaked them out, because they thought I was going to be like them. I wasn't going to go back. I wasn't going to do it. And they freaked out on me hardcore when I did that. And I was like, you guys, I just need a pause.
Yeah.
But for them, I think that was just perhaps in retrospect, it was triggering for them, because it made them recall certain things in their past that they didn't get the opportunity to do, and saw this as like, her daughter isn't going to have this opportunity that we really want for her.
Yeah. And were you on track to, you had something specific in mind to study at the time? Because, we'll lead up to where you're at now. But did you have something specific that you were like, oh, I want to be this when I grow up?
Yes. And it's like, I was all over the place though. I mean, it's hilarious. And this is still who I am, because I'm just an all over the place kind of person like this. I feel like there would never be enough time to study everything that I'm interested in studying. So, I mean, my friends, my family, they laugh at me when they see a list of things, jobs, or just interests, because it's like literally everything. So an example would be in deciding what to study in school, I went into school thinking, when I was at the end of high school, I was very into being outdoors. I thought I wanted to be a forest ranger, which is hilarious coming from the Bronx. Like, people are like, do you even know what being in nature is like? Central Park, maybe? Yeah. So it is kind of funny, but I had, I think, maybe a romanticized vision of being in nature and being in the woods. And, but also I did have an actual love for being outdoors and away from the city, even though like the city is a comfort zone for me because it's just where I grew up.
Yeah.
So I thought I wanted to be a forest ranger. And that turned into me pursuing initially an environmental science major degree. And that's what there were some programs that I specifically applied to for that. But where I ended up going to school was much more open. You didn't have to declare until the end of your sophomore year, which is pretty unusual. Usually you have to declare earlier than that, but it was very open. So I thought that's what I was doing. I wasn't in love with the classes that I was taking, and then was taking these other very interesting, like, semiotics courses and modern culture media courses. And so I ended up studying art semiotics. So the study of semiotics, how things are represented in culture and society, very like interesting. And on the one hand, very intellectual because it's an academic study,
Yeah.
but then also ironically so because what you're studying is culture and like basically human existence. But I was doing that in an interdisciplinary way using the medium of film to explore that. So that's what I mean by all over the place. And now I'm a yoga teacher. So then I ended up moving into the world of anatomy and physiology and nutrition. I'm a vegan. I've been a vegan for a long time now. I was a vegetarian from high school. And so these are things that I find, just really interesting. And to me, like, the trajectory makes sense. And I can explain it.
Share that. Yeah, great.
But I think, it is all over the map. And I think that is just how I experience life. Like, I can find points of connection and interest in a lot of different subject matters. And, but I am very passionate about both the physical body and then also like the spiritual body, like being connected to something that's bigger than any of us as individuals, and that we are part of something bigger in the universe.
Do you see that connected? As you say, you can see the path. Do you feel like that spirituality piece is connected at all to growing up in a household with was your father Catholic?
Yes.
Okay. Two religions that were that pretty strong or strict guidelines sometimes, Tell us about how possibly the culture impacted the path that you were on, whether or not it did, but there probably are some connections there.
It's interesting. So I think neither of my parents were extremely religious, which I guess may be in some ways obvious because otherwise they probably would not have been open-minded enough to be together.
Yeah.
But that being said, my dad was a very like spiritual guy. And so his grandmother, my great grandmother, who I never met, she died well before I was in existence and before my parents met. My dad had a very close relationship with his grandmother, and she was basically a psychic medium and very into this world. I don't know what it's called, but there in Puerto Rican culture, there is like a practice or belief that you can communicate with beings beyond this physical realm.
Yeah.
And she would hold group seances in their apartment to communicate. And she said that my dad also had this gift. And there were some different stories that my dad shared with me about that connection that they had. And I found it just very compelling, and not in a scary way, just in a very like open way of like, there is something beyond the meat suits that we're inhabiting.
Yeah.
Like there's a way that we're connected that goes beyond this human existence. And I don't know what that is. I don't have the answers. I don't think my dad or his grandmother or my great grandmother had the answers, but
were you told you had this gift too, or
me? No.
Oh, okay.
I was not. I wasn't. But I had an openness to it, but I think I also had a fear of it because like my dad was like Yeah, he was very like he would light up when he would talk about it. Like,
oh, wow.
And I think part of that was because of his relationship with his grandmother. And somehow that made him think of her. And that was something that, like, I think of all the people in his life, she was the one who showed him unconditional love.
Yeah.
And I think he didn't have that from his parents so much. I think culturally, like, he was the youngest. His brother was the oldest son. So he got, you know, all of the hope was put into his brother as like, okay, you are the shining star, no matter what he did. You know, I mean, even it didn't even really matter. That was just the belief. And I saw that and felt that in how my grandparents treated me and my brother, because we were the parents of the younger son, not the oldest son. And like, even just like at Christmas, this is an example. At Christmas, like, they would give us cards with money in it. And I know this because they lived with us. So, like, my grandmother would have my dad do this for her. Like, okay, can you help me put together the cards for the grandchildren? Yeah. And me and my brother would get less money than our cousins because we were my dad's kids.
Oh, interesting.
And my dad's brother, Antonio, would get the most money. So, like, even though they were living with us, my dad thought it wasn't even like weird for them. Like, and it's just like those little, like, even like microaggressions for my dad. Like, I think that just did contribute to a feeling of him being unloved. And I do think that he was always seeking that love from his parents and approval from his parents. And I think he got that from his grandmother, and that's why that relationship was very special for him.
And it's so powerful, you know, you sharing that and realizing that, and I can just, you know, feel the empathy you have for your dad, or this, you know, in those moments of where you probably experienced it back then, not understanding it with the gravity that you do now. Understanding those experiences and all the experiences you've had. You've lived in New York, melting pot. I love going to New York. It's just a different world. Like, I feel like it's an amazing place. Like, there's so many different people there. And you've lived in Berkeley and in California, and you lived in Italy. How has your sense of identity or your sense of self, has it changed through those travels, per se? And yeah, share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially the move that I made a little over 4 years ago to Italy has made me more aware of the fact that there's no external thing that is ever going to make me feel like I belong. And I think I have been, as someone who doesn't have a homogenous background. I have been looking for that because, again, like, I felt like whatever place I was in, like, I was searching. I wasn't like, just like, okay. Yeah. I'm here. I belong here. I don't think I ever felt that way. And I don't mean that I never, like, felt a sense of home. I think I really enjoyed living in the Bay Area. New York, it just feels like a natural place, even though, like, there are a lot of stressors, and both of these places are also very expensive. So that just, like, financial factor is just an external stress. But I think moving to a place where, like, when I moved here, I didn't speak any Italian. now I speak like intermediate level Italian. I can get around and get by, and have not like super deep conversations, but have conversations about interesting things. But there's work to be done. But I will always be a foreigner here. And part of that is, I think the culture here is so rich, but it's also like, especially where I live in Sicily, the south part of Italy in general, so Sicily is the most south part of the country, but it's poor. Like, it does not have a lot of resources that are available in the northern part of the country, but it's culturally very rich. And even just like agriculturally rich as well, because of the microclimates that exist on the island. Like, it's amazing. Like, I've never had such delicious fruits and vegetables in my life. But even if I stay here for the rest of my life, which I don't know if I will. I mean, there might be some hybrid back and forth, but and no matter how good my Italian gets, I will never be from here. And so, and that's okay, because I'm not from here.
Yeah.
And so I see my identity as being something that comes more from within. And it is a conglomerate of like that apartment in the Bronx in Co-op City where I grew up, where my mom still lives. Unfortunately, my dad passed away 5 years ago, so he's not there any longer, in the physical form anyway. But, all of those elements of the things I've experienced throughout my life are with me. They're within me. Yeah. And I feel like I'm carrying them. And the more that I can tap into that, the more that I can be confident in myself and not look for like external acceptance. But it's hard. It's a work in progress.
No, that was really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. With the work you're doing now, if your work in yoga, tell us a little bit about that, but also, just from what you explained, it sounds like your experience is it's a very rich experience living in multiple different places, having grown up the way you did. I feel a lot of times, and I'll say there's a new age of spirituality, but a lot of times people are participating in that to find their identity. So share a little bit about your work and share how your experience has helped you help others understand maybe their identity better, even if they're homogenous, or also what home means when someone's looking for that something.
Yeah. So I'm a yoga teacher and also a fitness teacher as well. So a lot of the yoga classes that I teach are asana based, so physically based. They're a lot of physical practice, because that is what is the gateway entry to yoga for most Westerners in Western culture. And I also teach meditation classes, those are not necessarily explicitly yoga. Sometimes it is, if it's specifically a yoga practice, and sometimes it's a lot more generally a mindfulness practice that has influences of yoga, but is more of a hybridized practice of more modern mindfulness practices. And then there are different I don't know lifestyle stuff. So I'm also a nutrition coach, and am interested in integrating a more holistic experience for people, so that it's not just like, let's go to this hour-long yoga class. Although that's good, and honestly is usually where it starts, and I mean, is most of what my work has been doing, especially up until moving to Italy.
Yeah.
So like when I was in Berkeley, for example, I taught, full time, I taught like 12 yoga classes a week, led teacher trainings to train other teachers, different workshops. So I was very busy with that. And that was largely a physical practice with some incorporating meditation, pranayama, breath work. And I think both as I've gotten older and also as I've gotten just honestly, like where I live, there's not like a saturation of yoga studios or even like the same level of interest. I mean, I think people would be interested, but it's not to the extent of like what I'm used to having been in the Bay Area of California or New York. But I think like my identity, I'm just interested in a more integrative approach that takes all aspects of our lives into account. So it's not ideally just a physical yoga practice, or a physical even movement practice, or if it's a movement practice that we're integrating different types of movement into our practice, not just lifting weights, just holding a yoga pose. And so addressing us as individuals as more of a whole. And I think that could be done in a group class environment. That could be done in a more of a one-on-one private environment, depending on what makes the most sense. But I have found my experience here to be just more intimate. The classes are much smaller when I'm teaching them in person. I also teach online, and I lead yoga retreats. So that came to a grinding halt with the COVID pandemic. And I am excited to be back at that. And I've shifted directions with that a little bit because, on the one, initially I was just excited to travel again and to be able to lead retreats all over the world. And then just doing a little bit of thinking about the environmental impact of that for me if I'm just running around all over the place, as well as the cost impact. I am focusing more on not so much of a yoga retreat, but a yoga and cultural adventure. So because I am developing an intimate relationship with the land that I'm living on now here in Sicily, that's something that I would like to share with others through my unique lens, through my own experience, because I'm not Sicilian. But I have Sicilian friends who I can also like give them a platform for sharing their culture. And so that's something that I'm more interested in moving toward. So that's something I'm developing. I have a retreat in October that would be like a yoga cultural adventure.
That's awesome.
So I'm excited about
that. Yeah, that's because I'm thinking, and I've not been to a yoga retreat, even though that sounds awesome. I would love to attend one, and something.
You're invited.
With some cultural, event connected to it, because I think a lot of times, in the name of travel escapism or whatever, some people will go to a yoga retreat and they'll go to Costa Rica and lock themselves in this little resort, and it won't be anything. It won't be immersive, or it won't include anything else. So I love that idea of including, culturally, what you've been experiencing, and including others that actually, are Sicilian and that have lived there all their life, and having them share their culture too. That's spirit. That would impact the spiritual richness, I think, of the experience. I'm hoping that people do understand that,
I agree.
Couple last questions here is, do you hold on to, you've traveled, so, and you're now living in Italy. Do you have any of those pieces of your parents' culture with you as reminders of them and your culture, Puerto Rican, Jewish woman, or do you still celebrate any of the holidays and maybe introduce the people of Sicily to those different cultures?
I think I could do a better job with that, to be perfectly honest. I think the pieces of my parents' culture come up in like little ways and through like little acts of behavior. So for example, there was like a toast, like when you click glasses, something that my dad would always say in Spanish. And so that's something like when I'm out with friends here, I'll say it just because it's something I grew up with, but then also something that he said. And I mean, I'm with people who might not necessarily understand, but then we'll translate it into Italian and have fun with that. It's just an opportunity, like these little pieces, they might not be significant in being like this deep thing, but they're just ways to hold on to the people and the cultures that we love or that are a part of us. But I could do better. No, that's, I mean, we evolve, but I love that one little thing. And we do that like with my dad and some of his mannerisms or things like that. You know, I'll tell my daughter, so yeah, he used to, you know, whenever he talked to us, he used to point like this, you know, like that was his thing, you know. So, have you ran into individuals who are multiracial or multicultural that are Sicilian? I was just thinking about that as we're having this conversation. And if you are, and you're able to have a conversation with them, anything from that? You know, it's really interesting. So I would say yes, absolutely. Because also Sicily is a really interesting place culturally compared to other parts of Italy because of its geographical location and because it is an island. It's a very large island, but it's an island. So its history of being conquered by different countries is very extensive. Yeah. And because of that, there are a lot of different cultures that are a part of this Italian island. And I think people who are from Sicily identify themselves as Sicilian before they identify themselves as Italian. And when they go to the mainland, we'll be like, I'm going to Italy now. It's like, well, you're technically in Italy, but I get you because of this. So there's a very strong cultural identity here. And I mean, there is a different language. Sicilian is its own language. It's not even a dialect. Like it is an official language, recognized as an official language. And so, I mean, there is a lot. I would say most people who are Sicilian, or it just comes in a lot of different flavors. Sure. Like a lot of people who are Sicilian are multiracial, are multi-ethnic. And you can see it in the way people look. You could see it in the culture of the food here, the influences from different parts of the surrounding world, from Spain, from North Africa, from the Normans, from where else? France. So you see it from a lot of different cultures that have been like, no, we're going to take that island. No, I'm going to have that island. So it's very interesting. Absolutely. But to your point, I don't think the way racial identity is here is very different. And so I think all of those people who look very different all identify as Sicilian. They don't see their differences from each other. They see their unified identity as being Sicilian. And the other are like the more recent immigrants from Africa, from Pakistan, from other parts of the world that are quote unquote not Italian myself.
Sure.
And so those immigrant populations are not yet integrated into the society and the culture here. And the same as I'm seen as a foreigner, so are they. But within the Sicilian culture, there are so many different identities, and people are clearly multi-ethnic and multiracial, but they don't identify as such.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love that.
It is.
Yeah, I want to go visit Sicily now.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah. So I always ask everyone, what's your recipe for world peace? We'll end on, what is Sharon's recipe for world peace? There's something in what you just said, I think, that there is.
I mean, this is, I love this question, and it also makes me a little bit sad, too, especially in the context of the time period that we're talking. While there's a genocide going on, it's easy to feel powerless.
Yeah.
And I think recipe for world peace: ditch capitalism, be nice to each other, don't eat animals or animal products. I think those are good places to begin. And then we'll see once we've got those bases covered. Where we can go from there.
Those are three good ingredients for sure. That would probably clear up a lot of world turmoil. So, where can people find you online? Do you want to promote anything coming up? This episode will run in a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, maybe. She Yeah.
So, if you're interested in finding me online, I have a website that is SharonYogaFlow.com. I'm also on Instagram as Sharon Yoga Flow, so the same handle. And then I am super excited about the yoga and cultural adventure that I have coming up in Sicily in October. So it'll be mid-October.
Awesome.
And it's a week long. And I think it will be really fun because it's an opportunity for me to share all of the things that I've learned and that I love the most about living on this island. It will be at a place that is like a 35-minute drive from the city where I live. So it's at the base of the volcano Etna, but it's super accessible. So it's like you get the best of both worlds. And we're just going to go around and explore different parts of this side of the island and do a bunch of yoga and get to know each other.
That's
and
awesome.
Just hopefully have a space for maybe we'll figure out the recipe.
Yeah, and open up people's minds, like make them more worldly in the process and teach them what was the saying that with the glasses, if we were raising our glasses right now, what does your dad say?
Oh yeah, he would say salud, dinero y amor y el tiempo para gozarlo.
Beautiful. And with that, we are out. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for the Multiracialverse podcast. My name is Antonio Fernandez. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Huge shout out to my friend Johannes Skoda for mixing and creating the intro music, and DJ Kazam for the track.